Hey guys, tonight we drift gently into a world where dusty stone tablets whisper answers to modern stress, and where ancient scribes might have handled our inboxes better than we do. Imagine the slow scratch of a reed stylus on wet clay under a sunburnt sky. No blue light, no notifications, just thought and intent baked into permanence. It's Mesopotamia, and somewhere around 3000 BCE, some overworked dude named Enlilbani is already quietly judging your Slack messages. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. I always imagined ancient Mesopotamia as dusty and chaotic, cuneiform-covered walls, sandals slapping on hot stone, and somewhere, someone muttering about barley rations. But it turns out these people had a lot figured out, not just in the invented writing in cities sense. I mean, they had structure, legal codes, meal breaks, cosmic calendars, and built-in work-life boundaries before HR departments existed. Take the scribes. These weren't just human printers, they were revered knowledge keepers, trained from childhood to master thousands of wedge-shaped symbols. They copied laws, recorded stars, wrote love poems, and yes, tracked receipts. But they also had a rhythm to life. Work was sacred, sure, but so was rest. There were designated festival days, lunar holidays, and breaks during intense summer heat. If your clay dried out, so did you. And here's the first zinger. One Babylonian clay tablet from 4,000 years ago contains what might be the earliest recorded customer complaint. A guy named Nanny wrote to a copper merchant complaining about poor quality and slow delivery. So yes, bad service and burnout go way, way back. Historians still argue whether this tablet was passive-aggressive or just brutally honest. Either way, Nanny knew his worth. And speaking of worth, Mesopotamian society believed in cosmic accountability. Every action, from sowing grain to raising a child, was part of a divine balance. They called it, a set of universal principles handed down by the gods. You weren't just doing chores, you were participating in a cosmic order. It's like the opposite of doom scrolling. Imagine washing dishes and feeling like Enki himself is nodding in approval. Now here's where it gets spooky. Some clay tablets describe rituals for cleansing not just bodies, but thoughts. Priests would chant over water, anoint the sick, and whisper to the wind. Not as superstition, but as spiritual hygiene. They believed emotions, especially anxiety, were physical intrusions, like spirits that had to be soothed or expelled. The prescription? Not a pill, but a ritual bath, incense, rest, and sometimes a talking to by a professional dream interpreter. Honestly, sounds better than a 2-hour meeting. And then there's the cities, Uruk, Nippur, layered with bricks and memory. One archaeologist once said that walking through their ruins feels like walking through someone else's thoughts. In they found a structure that might have been the first school, not a military academy, not a temple. A school, with clay slates bearing corrected exercises, like a sleepy kid just trying to learn the sign for fish. That's how much they valued wisdom. But what makes me pause is how they dealt with failure. Instead of internalizing guilt, Mesopotamians externalized misfortune. If crops failed or illness came, they didn't blame themselves. They assumed the gods were sending a message, one to be deciphered, not feared. They consulted omens, looked to dreams, adjusted course. Failure wasn't personal, it was celestial feedback. Let's bring that to now. Imagine treating burnout not as weakness, but as a divine check-in. Imagine if, instead of pushing harder, you lit some cedar incense and wrote a complaint to your modern equivalent of a copper merchant. Dear Calendar app, your delivery of peace and clarity has been insufficient. And if you ever think you're too behind to start something new, remember this. The Epic of Gilgamesh, often called the oldest known work of literature, was discovered in fragments, scattered across ruins, buried beneath dust and centuries. And yet we read it, we feel it. A tale of kings and grief and the quest for immortality, familiar, timeless, echoing in the hush between heartbeats. So tonight, if your thoughts are tangled, your to-dos half-finished, and your brain humming like a broken lyre, think of Nanny, scribes, clay tablets, and temples that whispered order into chaos. Your breath is the stylus. Each exhale presses a wedge of calm into the soft clay of the moment. Let the past hold you. Let the old gods whisper structure into your unstructured mind. And if you dream tonight of walking through a sunlit city of mud brick and music, let your feet carry you slowly, like time itself in Mesopotamia. Unrushed, reverent, still. I'll admit it, I've always had a soft spot for ancient Egypt, not just because they basically invented eyeliner or because they wrapped their dead in linen like carefully packed leftovers, but because they knew something we're still fumbling toward, that order is sacred and death is just part of the admin. See, to the Egyptians, Ma'at, order, balance, harmony, was the invisible software running the universe. It wasn't just some abstract concept, it was a literal goddess. Every sunrise, Ma'at. Every judgment in court, Ma'at. Every time you managed to finish a Zoom call without screaming into your pillow, you guessed it, Ma'at. Their afterlife, too, was a masterclass in organization. Forget vague clouds and harps. This was a detailed journey through gates, riddles, and boss fights. The Book of the Dead was basically an interdimensional travel guide. You'd get a checklist of spells, passwords, and affirmations, like an emotional resume for the soul. And the pièce de résistance? The weighing of the heart. When you died, your heart was placed on a scale against a feather. If it was heavier, bloated by lies or selfishness, you were devoured by a demon crocodile hippo lion hybrid named Amit. I'm not making this up. One bite, and poof, your soul was canceled. But if your heart was light, onward to paradise. No inbox, no deadlines, just eternal chill. It's wild how much this resonates. In our world of life hacks and bullet journals, the Egyptians had the OG productivity system: live clean, speak truth, and die lighthearted. Some scholars even claim the K, your spiritual double, was like your personal vibe score. If you radiated good energy, your Ka thrived. If not, it wilted like a neglected succulent. Here's a delightfully bizarre detail. Wealthy Egyptians were sometimes buried with miniature servant statues called ushabti. These little figurines were believed to spring to life in the afterlife and do your chores for you. Imagine dying and your to-do list still haunts you, but someone else has to do it. Honestly, goals. Now let's talk legacy. Egyptians didn't just fear death, they planned for it. Tomb inscriptions weren't just vanity plates, they were memory machines. The idea was that as long as your name was spoken, your soul lived on. That's why some pharaohs went full extra: obelisks, statues, entire pyramids shouting their name at the sun. And yet the humbler folk weren't forgotten. Archaeologists have uncovered tiny tombs etched with poems, prayers, and sometimes jokes. One reads, "Do not disturb unless you are bringing beer." Another warns, "I am watching you with the eyes of 1,000 cobras." I mean, that's an energy I can get behind. But here's the bit that always gives me goosebumps. The Egyptians believed memory had power. Speaking a name, recalling a story, even dreaming of the dead. All these could summon their presence. It's like every person was a living hard drive, storing pieces of those who came before. Historians still argue whether the obsession with death was fear-based or reverent. I think maybe it was both, and also a deeply beautiful form of self-accountability. The Egyptians didn't wait to be remembered. They made themselves memorable. So what does this mean for us? Juggling calendar invites and wondering if we left the stove on? Maybe the lesson is this: treat your daily routines as rituals. Brew your coffee like it's a sacred potion. Sign your emails with the flourish of a hieroglyph. Make your bed like it's a tomb chamber you're preparing for your future self. And if you ever feel overwhelmed, picture that cosmic scale. Weigh your heart, not against expectations or emails, but against kindness. Against moments when you chose stillness over scrolling, laughter over cynicism, gentleness over urgency. You might find your soul already floating, lighter than a feather. Tonight, as you sink into sleep, imagine wrapping yourself in linen, cool, soft, eternal. You are not escaping life. You're preparing for another layer of it, a dreamscape where forgotten gods still walk beside canals, and the stars spell out your name in secret code. Rest easy, K of mine. There's something about ancient India that makes my thoughts slow down, in a good way. Maybe it's the rhythm of Vedic chants echoing through temples, or the idea that even the gods took breaks to meditate under trees. Either way, the more I learned about their philosophies, the more I realized these people had stress management figured out thousands of years before anyone coined the term wellness. The ancient Indians weren't just curious about life, they were obsessed with understanding its nature, and not through conquest or control, but through inward exploration. Their ultimate question wasn't, how do we win? It was, what are we? Let's start with the Upanishads, those mysterious, poetic texts whispered into existence around 800 BCE. They read like bedtime stories for philosophers. One of my favorites says, "You are that." That what? That everything. The stars, the trees, the silence, the fire. You're not separate from the world. You are the world. Talk about cosmic self-esteem. Now here's the kicker. They didn't think your soul, Atman, was just a glowing orb inside your chest. It was identical to the soul of the universe, Brahman. Basically, you're not just in the divine Zoom call, you are the host. To access this understanding, they developed systems we still use today. Yoga, meditation, breath control. But back then, yoga wasn't about downward dogs or cute leggings. It was a disciplined path toward dissolving the ego. Imagine doing stretches not to tone your abs, but to understand the structure of time. That's commitment. And then there's karma. These days we use it like a cosmic boomerang. He cut me off in traffic, karma'll get him. But to ancient Indians, karma wasn't revenge. It was reflection. The universe wasn't punishing you. It was showing you you. Every act, thought, or word left a fingerprint on your soul. Not judgment, just consequence. Here's something wild. In some Hindu texts, the entire universe is said to be periodically destroyed and recreated in cycles lasting billions of years. That's right, billions. Scientists didn't even know the Earth was that old until recently. But ancient sages were already sitting cross-legged, saying, oh yeah, this version of reality, temporary. Historians still debate how much of this was rooted in actual astronomy versus spiritual metaphor. But either way, it paints a picture of people who didn't fear impermanence. They made peace with it. They embraced the idea that to be alive is to be part of a constantly swirling, changing, rebirthing cosmos. One fringed gem I adore. Some yogis believed that with enough focus, you could hear the universe humming. They called it Aum, the sound of existence itself, not created by any one thing, but the vibration of being, a kind of divine background music. Imagine falling asleep to that instead of true crime podcasts. The Buddha too was part of this world. Born Siddhartha Gautama, he was a prince who saw the suffering of the world and decided to piece out of palace life and sit under a tree until he figured stuff out. Spoiler, he did. But what's brilliant is what he taught. Not how to avoid pain, but how to understand it. Life is suffering, he said, not as a bummer, but as an observation. And then he gave tools: mindfulness, right action, compassion. He didn't say, be positive. He said, be present. He didn't offer salvation through faith, but through awareness. Ancient Indian spirituality wasn't about submission or dogma. It was about inquiry. You didn't have to believe, you had to explore. Even now, there are temples with no gods, just mirrors reminding you, look inward. That's where the divine hides. Let's not forget Ayurveda, the ancient science of life. It wasn't just about herbs and oils, though yes, turmeric was the Beyoncé of ancient India. It was about aligning with nature's rhythms. Eat with the sun, sleep with the moon. Don't fight the seasons, flow with them. Here's a tiny detail that stays with me. Some Vedic prayers were sung while boiling rice, not because the rice needed blessings, but because the act of cooking was sacred. Every moment, if done with awareness, could be a doorway to the infinite. So tonight, if your thoughts are racing, if the world feels like it's spinning too fast, remember, you are not outside the storm. You are the sky it spins in. You are not lost in the noise. You are the space beneath it. Close your eyes, breathe in slowly, And as your body melts into your bed, like ghee on warm chapati, imagine this: a sage seated under a tree, smiling, not because he knows everything, but because he's finally okay with not knowing. Sleep deep, Atman. If ancient India was about the soul's breath, then ancient Egypt was about the soul's journey. And not just any journey, a multi-stage, trap-filled, divinely supervised obstacle course that made modern escape rooms look like toddler puzzles. Because to the Egyptians, death wasn't the end. It was a process. But let's rewind a little. Before tombs and pyramids and golden sarcophagi, there was the Nile. That river didn't just water crops, it watered imagination. It rose and fell like a cosmic heartbeat, dictating life's rhythm. Some say it even inspired the Egyptian view of time. Not a ticking clock, but a flooding river, eternal, cyclical, sacred. The Egyptians believed we were born with multiple souls, yes, multiple. There was the Ka, your life force, the Ba, your personality, the Ak, your immortal spark. And all these pieces had to be properly cared for, or they'd get lost, confused, or, worst case, devoured by a soul-munching demon with a crocodile head. No pressure. When someone died, their journey through the afterlife was just beginning. First stop, the Hall of Two Truths, where your heart was weighed against a feather. If it was heavier, burdened by lies, regrets, bad vibes, you were fed to Ammit, the devourer. If lighter, congrats. You passed the cosmic polygraph and could continue toward eternal chillness. Here's the kicker. To make it through, the dead had to recite spells from memory. Some people commissioned custom scrolls, essentially spiritual cheat sheets, known as the Book of the Dead. Think of it like a GPS through the underworld. In 300 yards, turn left at the fire lake of screaming serpents. Historians still argue whether the elite manipulated these beliefs for political control, since only the wealthy could afford elaborate tombs and ritual access. But what's certain is this: the Egyptians treated the invisible world with logistical precision. Dying wasn't just sacred, it was an event to be planned like a royal wedding. Now let's peek into those pyramids. Far from just grand coffins, they were cosmic engines. The shafts weren't ventilation, they aligned with star constellations. Some believed they were meant to launch the pharaoh's soul toward Orion, where Osiris, god of the afterlife, hung out waiting the spiritual hors d'oeuvres. Others think the entire pyramid was a model of the heavens. Either way, stellar travel was on the itinerary. And then there's the scarab beetle, yes, the bug. To the Egyptians, it wasn't just a creepy crawler, it was a sacred symbol of rebirth. They watched dung beetles roll their spheres across the desert and said, "That's the sun. That's what Ra does every day, rolls light through darkness." Suddenly makes beetles seem kind of profound. Here's a fringe tidbit. Some believe dreams were not just messages, but locations, real places your soul visited. One theory even suggests the dream book, found in ancient tombs, was an early attempt at psychological mapping, ancient Freudian vibes minus the couch and glasses. Let's talk tomb design for a moment. Each one wasn't just a box, it was a portal. Painted walls told stories of creation, afterlife, and the gods, but not for decoration. Reading these texts aloud activated the tomb's magic. That's right, sound was a key. If no one read the spells, the soul might get stuck in a metaphysical cul-de-sac forever. And can we talk about mummification? Not just to preserve the body, but to preserve the identity. Organs were removed and placed in canopic jars, each guarded by a protective deity. Even the brain was extracted, usually through the nose, because apparently the Egyptians weren't big fans of neurology. They believed wisdom lived in the heart, but here's something tender. Some tombs show the deceased being welcomed into the afterlife by their pets, cats especially. Egyptians didn't just love cats, they worshipped them. In fact, killing a cat, even by accident, could land you in serious trouble. Maybe they were onto something. Maybe the secret to eternity is a purring guardian on your lap. Now the big twist. While pharaohs built monuments to be remembered forever, most everyday Egyptians found immortality in memory. Families visited tombs, brought offerings, whispered names. To be remembered was to exist. To be forgotten was to fade. So next time you say someone's name aloud, maybe pause. You're keeping their soul just a little bit warmer. And so, as your eyelids grow heavier and your breath softens, imagine this. You're sailing gently down the Nile at dusk. Lotus blossoms drift beside you. A cat watches from the shore. The stars blink awake, aligning into familiar shapes, maybe even your own. The boat slows. A temple glows ahead. And somewhere inside, a feather rests on golden scales, waiting, not to judge, but to balance. To remind you that even the heaviest heart can be made light again, if only you remember how to let go. Let's gently drift now toward the Far East, where mist curls around mountain temples, and the air itself feels like it's holding its breath. Welcome to ancient China, where wisdom was steeped in stillness, like a tea leaf blooming in hot water. And where the answers to life didn't shout, they whispered. To the sages of ancient China, the universe wasn't chaos needing order. It was already balanced, if we'd only stop fidgeting with it. And balance, they believed, came from understanding two little symbols that would become global icons. Yin and Yang. You've seen them. A circle split in black and white, each holding a dot of the other. But to the ancients, it wasn't just a logo. It was everything. Yin was the moon, the shadow, the pause. Yang was the sun, the motion, the spark, day and night, breath in, breath out. One didn't conquer the other, they danced eternally. And humans, we were part of that rhythm, not outside of it. If your life feels like chaos lately, maybe it's not broken. Maybe it's just offbeat. Now let's meet the philosophers who sculpted this worldview, not with chisel and marble, but with ideas that rippled across centuries. First up, Laozi, the gentle old man who, legend says, rode off on a water buffalo after writing the Tao Te Ching, a short, cryptic, cosmic user manual. In it, he described the Tao, the way, not a path you follow, but one you stop resisting. It's like the current of a river. Fight it and flail, flow with it and float. Laozi once said, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, but also, don't rush the step. Don't even aim anywhere. Just step. Then came Confucius, the social opposite of Laozi's chill. If Laozi was moonlight on a pond, Confucius was a polished stone walkway. He believed harmony came not from nature, but from relationships, respect, ritual, responsibility. He was the original clean your room guy, but with philosophical gravitas. Confucius said the world worked best when people knew their role and played it with sincerity. Parent, child, ruler, subject, friend, friend. If everyone practiced lei, the proper way of behaving, then society would hum like a well-tuned zither. Some scholars say he created one of the earliest meritocracies. Others argue he just cemented hierarchy. Either way, he got people to behave better using nothing but words. Here's a quirky bit. Both Laozi and Confucius are rumored to have met. The conversation, if it happened, probably went like, Confucius, society must be organized. Laozi, why not just chill? Historians still argue whether this meeting happened, or whether it's a parable about the tension between structure and flow. But it makes for a good scene, doesn't it? Now let's pivot to medicine. Ancient Chinese healers didn't treat diseases. They treated disharmony. They believed energy flowed through invisible channels in the body called meridians. When it got blocked, boom, illness. So they used acupuncture, herbs, even massage to restore that balance. Fringe fact, some texts describe treatments based on observing your face. One scholar wrote that the tip of the nose revealed your heart health, and the space between eyebrows showed your liver status. Talk about reading someone's face. And of course, we must whisper about qi, the vital life energy that flows through all things. Modern science doesn't quite know what to do with it. But if you've ever walked into a room and felt something, or stood beneath an old tree and felt oddly calm, you've touched the edge of it. Even architecture reflected this belief. Enter feng shui, the art of placing things so qi could flow properly. Your bed facing the wrong direction? That wasn't just bad decorating, it was spiritual gridlock. Ancient builders consulted feng shui masters before placing temples, graves, even cities. Some modern billionaires still won't sign a deal without one. And how about those mountains? The Chinese believed some peaks were sacred, homes of immortals, gateways to other realms. Pilgrims climbed them not to conquer, but to commune. Breathing thinner air, they believed, brought you closer to heaven, or at least offered better reception to the divine. Let's pause here. Imagine you're walking up one of those sacred paths, moss underfoot, a crow caws somewhere in the mist. You pass a twisted pine, older than empires. A monk sweeps stone steps with a twig broom. Nothing spoken, but everything said. Now, one last twist. In ancient Chinese thought, dreams weren't just random brain static. They were messages, sometimes from ancestors, sometimes from the Tao itself. The philosopher Zhuangzi once dreamed he was a butterfly. When he woke, he wasn't sure if he was Zhuangzi dreaming he was a butterfly, or a butterfly dreaming it was Zhuangzi. Either way, it was beautiful. And so, as you rest now, perhaps under the stars, perhaps under a weighted blanket from Target, remember this: ancient China didn't give us hard answers. It gave us soft questions. What is harmony? Who are you beneath the name? What does it mean to flow? Maybe the answers are in your breath, or in the way your thoughts start to slow, or in the smile of an old friend reincarnated in a dog. So breathe, let go. And if the Tao whispers to you tonight, smile back. It's been waiting for you. The journey now exhales, slow and warm, like mist rolling off a quiet river. You've walked alongside gods, laughed with sages, stared up at cosmic trees, and whispered to seeds. You've stepped across continents and centuries, only to find that the wisdom you searched for was always sitting quietly beside you, like an old friend who never needed to speak first. So now let your shoulders soften, let your jaw unclench. Picture that ancient ceiba tree again, not towering now, but smaller, curled up beside your breath, each leaf rising and falling with the rhythm of your chest. The stars have dimmed above, not out of absence, but respect, as if they too are folding in for rest. If your thoughts linger, let them. They're just old stories stretching their legs before sleep. If a memory flickers or a strange image visits, don't chase it. Let it pass, like paper boats on a still pond. The world is quieter now, and so are you. Even the sages are sleeping. Even the serpents of time have tucked their tails. There's no more truth to grasp, no more riddles to decode. Only the soft hush of knowing you are always part of something vast, something kind, something eternal. You are stardust wrapped in memory. You are laughter echoing across centuries. You are a thread in the great loom of time. So close your eyes now. Let sleep fold around you like the silken robes of a mountain monk. Let the echoes fade into dreams. Let your spirit, curious and gentle, stretch one last time into the quiet beyond the candlelight. Good night, traveler. Sleep deeply. Sleep.